Good afternoon from Miami Beach. This is Dr. John Bennett broadcasting for internetmedicine.com. Today we have a show from the European Student Think Tank, a great, smart bunch of European kids, mostly, and other people from Pakistan, India, etc. Anyways, I'm going to introduce Christos, and he's essentially going to run the show. Welcome, Christos.
Thank you for the floor and for hosting us as always, John. We're very glad to be here today. Actually, this is a cooperation between the Association of Medical Students of Bulgaria, chapter of Sofia University, the European Student Think Tank, and the Acknowledgments. We are teaching some basic skills beyond medical education, something that medical students can use to enrich their CVs or to cultivate their interests. The previous webinar that you may have watched was about conferences, and today we're discussing articles. We are going to discuss academic writing and non-academic writing. At this moment, I would like us to introduce ourselves before starting. And I will give the floor to Angeliki from the Association of Medical Students of Bulgaria, the Medical Education Committee, to tell us some words.
Thank you so much, Chris. My microphone has been.
It's okay. Hang on, just a temporary freeze. Most likely. Can you hear me, Christos?
Yes, I can hear you. Probably we can introduce each other until Angeliki can.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
Would you like to moderate this?
No, go ahead. Okay, let's go around and introduce ourselves to the audience, everybody. Let's start with Marco. Marco, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, Marco. Just tell us where you're from and who you are, etc.
Okay. So my name is Marco Doros. I am from Ukraine. Now I study classical philology at the University of Lviv in Ukraine. And yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Diana, is that Diana? Is that you, Diana? Or possibly not. Theodora, are you there?
Hello, everyone. I am Theodora, and I'm a medical student. I'm in my 5th year at the University of Thessaly in Greece.
Welcome. Umar, can you please introduce yourself? Umar, go ahead, Umar.
Yeah, I'm a student at Sofia University.
Very good. Welcome. Per Damien, are you there, Per?
Hey there. What's up?
Okay. Well, who are you and what do you do?
Now I'm Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us, Per? Possible. We're a little awkward in this. That's okay. We'll get better. Alias, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, good. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Elias. I'm studying medicine in the University of Sofia in Bulgaria, and I'm in a 5th year medical student.
Okay, great. Another student from Sofia. Anatoly, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello.
Go ahead, Anatoly.
I'm Anatoly. I'm a Greek medical student in Athens.
Okay, welcome. Ioannis Serapis, I recognize the name. You were here before. Ioannis. We'll get better at this, Christos. Go ahead, Ioannis. Okay, we'll go to. I'm not being too successful to Christos. Lolita, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Lolita Matrashova, intern from Ukraine.
Okay, welcome, Lolita. Maria? Maria, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, one.
We have two Marias. Maria Gakesu. Gakesu, is that right?
Yes, I'm Maria Gesu. Hello, I'm a third-year medical student from Medical University of Sofia.
Oh, great, great. Welcome. Okay, Konstantinos. Go ahead, Konstantinos.
Hello everyone. I'm a medical student as well from Sofia University, working in association with Bulgaria, the International Federation of Medical Students Association.
Welcome, another Bulgarian medical student. I think we got most everyone, Christos. Anybody I forget here? Stanimir, are you there? Are you there, Stanimir? Perhaps not. Okay, Christos, why don't you take it away?
Okay, I can see that Angeliki is back, so she can give a short introduction, and after that we can start with the first presentation, which will be about academic writing. Normally, we would have a second presentation on academic writing as well. Unfortunately, Asim, who would be in charge of it, cannot attend today because he is involved in some activities against the coronavirus in Pakistan. So after the presentation of Rehab concerning academic writing, we will move on with non-academic writing, literature, fiction, and poetry, which will be presented by me and by Theodora. Angeliki, please give a short introduction, and after that the floor will go to Rehab for your presentation.
Thank you, Christos. Sorry for missing. I hope I didn't miss a lot. I have a bad internet connection here in the countryside. So we are very glad that you're here today, and thank you very much for the collaboration with the European Student Think Tank and Intermedicine.com. Thank you, John, for always hosting us and moderating, of course. And I hope you enjoy this webinar as much as you enjoyed the previous one. And I hope it will be very constructive, and it will fill our time now in quarantine. So thank you very much, and then we can start.
Okay. Rehab, the floor is yours. You can go on with the first presentation.
Thank you, Christos. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. I am Rehab Rayan. I'm a PhD student in public health with major epidemiology from Egypt. And today I'm going to present to you Academic Writing 101. It's a brief session about academic writing. So this is an overview of what I'm going to talk about in this session, how to pick the right journal, what makes a good manuscript, article structure, manuscript preparation, and the journey of a manuscript. Okay. The first question to ask yourself as an author, and you should ask yourself this question before writing, why you want to publish your work. Have you done something new? Is there anything challenging in your work? Is the work related directly to a current topic of hot interest? And maybe we are living a topic of high interest, and hot topic these days. The COVID-19 is a topic of high interest nowadays, as you all know. Have you provided solutions to some difficult problems? If the answer is yes, for one or all these questions, then you should start preparing your manuscript. Okay, another question, how to choose a journal? This is a tricky question, and it might seem difficult to choose a journal for publication, but let's make it easy for you. Actually, there is databases that index journal, and I will present Scopus as one of the large multidisciplinary databases for peer-reviewed literature. Among these literature, scientific journals, books, conference proceedings, Scopus actually deliver comprehensive overview of the world's research output in many fields, including medicine. And of course, the Scopus features smart tools for tracking, analyzing, and visualizing research. Okay, I will provide some resources for what is Scopus and a tutorial for Scopus and how to find a journal of your field in Scopus by the end of the presentation. Okay, picking the right journal. You should, first of all, identify the community you're targeting, your readers. Your paper is meant for whom? Your audience. What is interesting for your audience? And you should match the journal you choose with the audience interest, of course. In every journal you will target, there is aims and scope page. You should read it well. And you should think, I think you should also question yourself, does the journal publish on the topic you have chosen? And how do you know that? By looking at accepted papers in the journal. You will find accepted papers in the maybe current issue or previous issues or archive of the journal. You should also make a literature search and find the current hot topics in recent publications. Of course, every journal would like to publish some hot topics. Like I said before, COVID-19 is a hot topic today. Okay. The right journal actually have editors, and editors, those are the one who would let your publication in the journal. And the editors are experts in the field, and no reviewers, those who will evaluate your manuscript and can guide the process of publication and resolve issues. As any field, in publication field, there are some ethics, and the first ethical consideration is avoiding plagiarism of others' work, and avoiding plagiarism actually not in publication or academic writing only, but actually for you as a students, medical students, you deliver assignments and reports, and you should avoid plagiarism. It's prohibited all in all. Avoiding also multiple publication, like you target 2 journals at the same time and you communicate with the editors of 2 journals for the same piece. This is not ethical, actually. You should cite and acknowledge every work you came by during your literature review and preparing your manuscript, and you should only list the co-authors who made actually contribution to your manuscripts. Okay, and what makes a good manuscript? A good manuscript actually contains a scientific message that is useful and exciting. It should convey author's thoughts in a logical manner. You let your readers come to the same conclusion as you. The format is best to showcase your material. And of course, your writing style should be clear enough. Okay, the article structure, as you can see in the screen, your article will start with the title, and the title is the key for your manuscript. Then an abstract. Abstract is the door for your manuscript. The abstract actually would let your readers complete your whole paper, or they would abandon it. You have some keywords, some terms that are the focal points of your manuscript, and then will come to the body of your manuscript. And the abbreviation IMRAD, I for introduction, M for methods, R for results and discussions. Your article would end with conclusions, acknowledgments, references, and supplementary material. Your article actually should be concise and clear. We are, as medical students, should maybe write in a clear language that made the non-expert or non-technical individuals understand medical literature. I will touch on some of the key components of an article in the following slides. Okay, as a general points for paper writing, we should get a feedback before we submit our papers. We can invite our colleagues from outside the area of our field, maybe non-medical friend can read it and go through it and see honestly if our manuscript flow logically and clearly. Jargon, medical jargon, scientific terms should be defined in the whole paper, and the experiments should actually support the conclusion. The conclusions are drawn from your methods. And of course, if English is not your first language, if you are not a native English speaker, you should seek a native speaker to check your manuscript for clarity and grammar spelling mistakes. Okay. Some journals actually require a cover letter. Some editors would ask you to submit a cover letter along with your abstract. And the cover letter should include why your paper is a good fit for this journal. You should add additional background that was not mentioned or don't fit in the abstract. You should think of why the question you're addressing through your paper is important and your findings would be interesting. You should also think about controversy or competitions you're offering. And when you are a published author, expert author, you would suggest a reviewer for your paper, or you would make exclusions about reviewers. Okay. What not to include in the cover letter? The abstract actually stands alone as an attachment, not in the cover letter. Your past accomplishments not to be shown in the cover letter, or maybe you presented this work before in a meeting or conference. The nice feedback you received shouldn't be mentioned in the cover letter. The cover letter actually should justify why your manuscript would fit in the journal. Okay, preparing a manuscript. As I said before, it's important that you use clear language in order to let editors and reviewers understand your work. There is a section that is entitled Guide for Authors. It would include the specifications for the language used, for the writing, for the referencing style, and all these guidelines about writing your manuscript. My advice to you is that you should work on the short sentences, correct tenses, and proper grammar, and have, as I said before, a native English speaker to check your manuscript, or maybe you use a language editing service. The title, as I said before, the title is the key to your manuscript. It should be concise, succinct, describes the key content, main point is clear enough, and avoid, of course, confusing abbreviations, obscure abbreviations in your title to be effective. You should write a clear abstract. An abstract is like a snapshot of the whole paper. It should be interesting, understandable, accurate, specific, brief, and to the point. If your reader came by your abstract and he wasn't captured with it, he or she wouldn't complete the whole manuscript actually. So the abstract is the door or the window for your paper. Okay, the introduction section. Introduction section should actually include a background about the field you're writing on, the problem you are addressing or your research question, and some solutions and limitations. After introduction, you will have the methods. Methods, of course, is the experiment you do. And then out of the methods, you bring results. A results section is so important, should be written in a clear and easy to understand language. It should be supported by paragraphs and high quality illustrations and figures. You should highlight, of course, unexpected findings. You should use statistical analysis, and I should stress on that statistics is important discipline in writing medical research. And of course, one picture is worth 1,000 words. So using good quality illustrations and figures that is showing your work in the results section is amazing and is encouraged. Okay. The discussion section will tie all together. In the discussion, you discuss your results. What do your results mean, and you link your results with other research results. Either it is with you or against your findings. And references section, of course, you should cite main publications that you used in preparing your manuscript. I encourage you not to use many references, but you should use actually the references you came by. You should fully absorb the material of these references. When you become a published author and have many publications, I advise you to avoid excessively citing yourself. And of course, you should go or comply or adhere with the guide of the journal about the style of the references used. The acknowledgments section. The acknowledgments actually is an important section. You should appreciate everyone who supported you in making your manuscript. You should say thank you for those who advised you or supported you, your supervisors, your sponsor financially, those who proofreaded your work, and those who maybe lent you materials for your experiments. You say thank you for all those who helped you in the acknowledgments section. So you prepared a manuscript, but are you ready to submit? I would say that roughly 35% of all submitted manuscripts are rejected before being peer reviewed for not complying or adhering with the guidelines. So make sure you revise your work and ask yourself, do your findings add something actually to the research field you are targeting? It would advance understanding in this field. Is your work of interest to the audience of the journal? Is your manuscript structured properly as we have done before in the preparation of manuscript? Your conclusion should be justified by your results. So, as I said before, conclusions are driven from your results. Are your references current, internationally accessible, so as your readers can click on the link for the reference and go to the actual reference? You should ask yourselves also about that. Format of the figures and tables should be properly done according to the guidelines of the journal, and the grammatical, of course, and spelling mistakes should be cared for before submitting your manuscript. The manuscript came to the journey of submission. You submit a manuscript actually to a journal editor. The editor would send it for reviewer. The reviewer could, as I said before, reject it without reviewing for not complying with the guidelines, or he or she would accept it with recommendations and would provide those recommendations for the editor back. The editor will communicate with you with the reviewer recommendation and invite you for revision. You make the revision and then submit your manuscript again. It is either rejected or hopefully accepted for publication. Here are the resources I said. I would provide those links to you in the chatting section. Those are illustrating Scopus and what it is and how to use it to search for journals in your field. And I came to my end of session. I hope you enjoyed the session, and heading back to Christos. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, Rahab is an editor in NovelMeds, the magazine and journal we are trying to set up these months. And she is very experienced, and I'm always amazed with her proactivity, her creativity, and how sound her knowledge of what she is doing is. So she was the ideal person to give this presentation. I think that you may have some questions, so at this point we can accommodate questions concerning the first presentation. Please don't be shy and ask. Also, if you have problems with your sound, you can write the questions in the chat section and we can speak it out.
The enemy of all broadcasters, dead air.
Don't be shy and ask your questions. Okay, if this is the case and you
Okay.
don't have any questions, we can move on with the second presentation. The
I
second.
have one question.
Go ahead, Maria.
I'm Maria. I wanted to ask how difficult it is to get published for the first time, and if you have any advice on what to read to get ideas for the type of writing that is needed.
Okay, Maria. It might seem difficult to publish for the first time, but I would advise you that you should not be frustrated with the rejections, because myself, I have been rejected a lot, and it actually added to my experience. You should advance your style, you should read a lot. I would ask you, you are, as a medical student, you should have a specific specialty to write about. You should focus on a specific specialty, and you should enhance your knowledge in this specialty. You should also seek collaboration with other researchers. You could be an assistant researcher or assistant writer to start with someone else who have prominent research and could guide you in starting your profession as a researcher writer. And that's it. It's not that hard, but it's as well not that easy, actually. Don't be frustrated from rejections. As I said, you should be maybe hardworking and knowledgeable researcher and writer. You should know about academic writing more and more. Actually, Elsevier is a prominent publisher in many fields, offering a research academy. It's a website telling you how to write, how to publish, how to get known among the scientific community or research community. I would drop the link for Elsevier Academy, Research Academy for you. It has fruitful resources to start with as a very beginning researcher or author.
Yeah, I have a question, Christos. It's actually, I'm reading this question from Saad Javed. He is a neurosurgical resident from Pakistan. He says, excellent presentation, Rehab. Do you think there is a bias amongst the journals? For example, the students in Pakistan often complain that international journals do not accept our original articles. Happened many times. Multiple people requested for guidance. And he thought he just wanted to raise that issue. Okay.
Okay, regarding bias, thank you, John. Regarding bias, it's it might be a political issue. I don't know. It's no, there is no bias. You are, as an author, have excellent work, and it's you're offering good work, and it is needed to be published for the whole world to get use of this work. So no, I don't think so. I think it's case by case. No bias, actually. I'm dealing with many authors from many countries, and Pakistanis, actually. I have some of my fellows from Pakistan, and they are publishing so well in highly ranked journals. So no, Saad, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, probably we can mute our microphones in case
Yeah,
we don't have.
I'll get that. Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries.
I hope I don't get fired.
You can always fire yourself again. Okay, so if there are no other questions, we will have time in the end if you think something else again. But in the meantime, we will start with the second bunch of presentations. Now we are moving from academic writing to non-academic writing. We're going to explore literature, namely fiction and poetry, and we are going to have two different aspects on this. I will introduce the first part, and Theodora Ioannidou will introduce the second part.
Okay, Christos, I'm sorry you were muted there. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. I'm just trying to open the presentation anyway.
Okay.
So here we are. Okay. So this bunch of presentations of non-academic writing is about the correlation between the art of medicine and the art of writing. We will have the first presentation called Prescribed Literature, Medical Fiction and Poetry. But let's become more clear about this. Do you think that by the end of this presentation, we will be prescribing books or poems to patients? Not really, but we may prescribe them to doctors because being involved in literature is something that has been scientifically proved that can improve our work and performance as clinicians and researchers, both in terms of being more compassionate and both also in terms of being more observing and able to communicate our fears and our considerations with our patients and our colleagues. So this is something that we should keep in mind always. So I think that the best way to start such a presentation is reading you a story. But this must be a short story because we don't have a lot of time. So you can read it with me. For sale, baby shoes never worn. This is actually the shortest piece of fiction that has ever been written, and it was written by Ernest Hemingway. He was inspired by an incident back in 1910 when the tragedy of a baby's death in the US was known into the press. They say that this story was a result of a bet among Hemingway and several other authors, and their bet was how fast and how concise can we be when writing literature. From a medical point of view, I think that you all understand that in this story, we have the description of a reality where we don't have good care for newborns. And the lack of this sufficient care and facilities results in a high level of mortality among newborns. And I don't think that Ernest Hemingway intended to give an overview of what happened in medicine in his time. However, medicine is there because somehow it affects reality. And speaking of reality, in fact, Hemingway probably never wrote this, and this may be a legend, and somebody else had the authorship of this. But the fact that we don't have an individual piece, but a collective piece is something that is a pattern that we usually find in literature, and I think also in medicine. In the first picture, you can see a scene from Iliad. Iliad is probably the first piece of literature, of epic poetry in the history of literature. And in the second photo, you can see a part of Hamlet. Hamlet is, as you know, a renowned play of Shakespeare in the English Renaissance. Among all these that are macroscopic ways of writing, they have huge huge poetry pieces. And the first one, which was a tiny piece of fiction, there is something in common. And this thing that is in common with them will help us to discover what is in common between medicine and literature. So let's see. Before we proceed, I need to explain to you the phylogeny of literature. I'm pretty sure you all know the fields of medicine, so I'm not going to speak about that, but there are also some fields of literature and writing in general. We have essentially prose and poetry. Prose is subdivided in non-fiction. Non-fiction is academic writing, like the one you discussed with Rehab, and fiction. And we also have poetry. Poetry is essentially one thing, but it is divided in poetry per se and drama. The difference is that drama is something that we have to play on a scene. So hypocrisy is also involved, but essentially drama is also poetry. In both cases, we have the division between macroscopic and microscopic, exactly like in anatomy, where we have microscopic or gross anatomy and microscopic anatomy, which is histology. In literature, microscopic is being more and more estimated because the more concise you are, the more sophisticated your work, either poetic or fiction, is. But let's now try to find the similarities between medicine and literature. In both cases, we have a pool of experience and data. The only difference is that in literature, this is called legends or stories or myths. For example, you all know Iliad and Odyssey, the epic poetry of Homer, but in fact, this was not written until about 600 BC, when Pisistratos, the tyrant of Athens, ordered some of his secretaries to write down the oral poets that people were narrating in his time. What they wrote down and what we know today as Iliad and Odyssey was not probably what Homer has thinked of. This is because between Homer and the people who wrote this down, there have been 300 years. In these 300 years, the narrative was going from mouth to mouth. Everybody was free to add or change or modify. But in any case, Homer was very lucky to retain the authorship. In literature, in many cases, we have a pool of legends, a pool of data, and some people who write them down have not only the talent and a good way of writing, but they also have a deep knowledge of history and of anything that can be translated into literature and communicated in a poetic or in a fiction context. So you also know very well that in medicine, we have a combination of ability and talent to synthesize. We are working in a clinical or in a laboratory environment. We have a lot of experience from the people around us. We try to be more systematic, and then we extract data from experience. And when we try to put this together, we end up with a research paper, either a review research paper or an original article. But in most cases, we are starting from a pool, and we have one person or a team of people who have a methodology that allows them to translate them into written form and communicate them. Something important in both literature and medicine is external factors. When you are doing research, you need funding, you need a professional affiliation with a laboratory or a clinical department, and of course, you need an infrastructure of communication, journals namely, and conferences where you will be able to publish your research and interact with other scientists. This is also important in literature. An author needs a basic income. Of course, most of the renowned authors are known because of their poverty and the fact that they really struggled. However, they survived somehow. You also need a workplace. Actually, the laboratory of literature can be more simplistic. It can be a desk or a computer, but in any case, you need your time and your space. And of course, just like in medicine, you need publishers and book presentations. These are the methods with which you can communicate the outcomes of your research, of your authorship with the public and with fellow authors, and receive their comments, feedback, and go on. So all in all, we have a lot of similarities between medicine and literature. However, there are some disparities. A doctor has always social approval. It is debatable whether the medical community will keep all of us in great esteem. However, everyday people will always respect somebody who is a doctor. This is not the same with a poet or an author. If you go out there, it's better to say I'm a doctor in order to gain the appreciation of the public. A second difference is the impact. Although medicine is also a long-term procedure and research takes a lot of time, the outcomes of research, clinical practice, is something that cures or relieves. And the first point of reference is always a doctor when a problem occurs. It's not the same for a poet or an author, although they can be a legendary figure or a national bard when it comes to a crisis. Even now, in the occasion of the coronavirus, you can see that doctors are the people who are today's heroes. Poets and authors are the ones who will translate and narrate the story, transform it in their way of expression, and probably this will be appreciated, but it will take about 100 years or even more for this to be appreciated. Think about it. If I ask you to name a poet or an author, the people that you will name most probably will have already died. So the impact of literature on the people who work in this is, and also to the people who read this, is slow. Even for people who are dedicated in reading literature, it will take time to build their knowledge and actually to be infiltrated by their knowledge and the messages that they receive from this. We also have a difference when it comes to ability and talent. In medicine, you can go to med school. Without any talent, you will obtain skills and you will be able to perform as a medical practitioner. Of course, talent, motivation, and inclination will make a difference. They will make you stand out, but in any case, you will be practicing as a doctor. It's not the same for authors. You can't go to become an author if you don't have an esoterical inclination to this. If you don't have this, you will just don't do it. And another interesting factor is the interplay between external and internal factors. As I said, in literature, it is important to have an internal motivation that will lead you and that will help you endure difficulties. And these difficulties can be poverty, can be starvation, and in times of political or socioeconomic crisis, it can also be exile or imprisonment. Doctors, although they can be defamed as well by the scientific community, will always be held high by the public. And actually, the external factors that will help people to go on as doctors, even if they lack in motivation, are the fact that they can have a good impact in their community, a good income, and also the appreciation of the public. So we have a serious disparity between medicine and literature, although essentially the ones who stand out in both fields are really dedicated to them. And we speak about the similarities, the disparities. Now let's see how these two are mixed. When you have a situation like this in Iliad, you will need a doctor. And from Iliad, from the very first piece of literature, we have two doctors, Machaon and Podalirios, who are in charge. They are the sons of Asclepius, if you know the story, and they are in charge of treating the injured soldiers. So we have a very early dramatology through their descriptions in the very first poetic work. Let's move on. You know that in medicine, when we try to give some practical knowledge of something, we use case reports. So in this case, I will go through 3 case reports to show you how, the interplay between medicine and literature. The first of it is Macbeth. Macbeth is, as you know, a famous work of Shakespeare. Of course, it is drama, but we will speak about the poem here. It is essentially the story of a royal couple who lost their mind because of their greed of power. In the second scene, in the second act, scene 1, we are reading the soliloquy, it is the monologue of King Macbeth. He is seeing a dagger before him, and he says that I don't have this dagger, but I still have it in my hands. This dagger leads his mind, although he recognizes that this is a false creation. This is a hallucination, actually, a vision. And he also is able to recognize and resonate on his condition, saying that his brain must not be in good health. In history of medicine, we know that heat-oppressed brain, according to the humoral pathology theory, is a brain that is in turmoil. If we go on this soliloquy, we can see that he even feels the blood on this dagger that he doesn't hold, but he sees in his vision. He mentions the fact that he has weak dreams, so we can see sleep disorders here, and probably hypothesize a background of paranoia, schizophrenia, or depression. And he has even visions of ghosts. Even stones and other items in his everyday life speak to him. And eventually he is led to his paranoid action by a bell inviting him. All this, although Shakespeare was not a physician, he was not educated about this, but it seems that his hero was a person with psychiatric conditions. We are not here to define which psychiatric conditions King Macbeth had. However, we can see that to describe them, you need to use a lot of medical terminology. And even though this is not accurate medical terminology, we as doctors can have a medical viewpoint on this. After that, we can discuss, for example, which disorder fits best. In a story that is not intended to be medical, in a story that has more to do with politics and history and legend, we have a lot of medical interpretations to do. There is a second kind of, a second case that we may discuss. This is the poem of Cavafy, Melancholy of Jason, son of Cleandros, poet in Comagene. This is a self-reference poet, and it is about how the poet himself experiences the fact that he's an author. The poet is a human, and as a human, he recognizes that he is frail. He is marching from youth to elder age and frailty. And he uses poet as a remedy for this. He is speaking to poetry as poetry is the doctor who has something of drugs, sedatives or anesthetics. And in terms of poetry and literature, these drugs are language and imagination. Because he feels the passing of time as a wound from an atrocious knife. And he understands that as in reality, the drugs of fiction and poetry are the one who will keep him for a while, who will keep the wound for a while from being lethal to him. So although, again, the author here, the poet, was not a doctor, he resonates with a medical condition, and he uses his poetry as a remedy. And last but not least, we will move on to an author who was also a doctor in real life. Most of you, and probably the ones with Bulgarian or Ukrainian or Russian origin, you may know Anton Chekhov and his renowned piece Palata Nomer 6. This is ward number 6, and this is a psychiatric ward. As a doctor, Chekhov is writing a lot of pieces about other doctors. We don't know if they resemble himself, but they resonate his fears and his considerations of medicine at his time. The main hero in this story is Dr. Andrei Ragin. He's working as a doctor in a small town, He was actually persuaded by his father to become a doctor. Originally, he didn't want to become a doctor, and this is something that many people in medicine would have, the fact that they were inclined to another field of studies, but because of many reasons, they were led to medicine. He is a calm man who likes simplistic life, but he lacks in will. He doesn't have a strength of will or leadership, and this costs enough for him. He possesses a thirst for intellectual conversation, and this is the reason why he's visiting the psychiatric ward number 6, where he can discuss a lot with a patient. In the end of the story, and as a compilation of the conflicts in his character, he is admitted involuntarily in this psychiatric hospital to the very mental ward number 6. So this is a story which is written by a doctor. It describes the life of a doctor, and it focuses on a very significant peril that we all should have in mind: burnout. The fact that we all the time experience conflicts in our profession, and these conflicts may, in the end of the day, in the end of our story, lead us to our own destruction. So reading this story, as physicians, we should be very clear, and we should be very careful about burnout, depression, and mental health issues in physicians, whether it has to do with ourselves or whether it has to do with our colleagues and friends in the profession. And at this point, you may ask me, why doctors should care about this kind of writing? Literature is nice, but we are busy. All of us are very busy. We don't have the time to care about this. The answer is simple, and it is also scientifically sound. There has been research that proved that people in the medical field who are also involved in art, either as creators or as readers, are more resilient and are also more observing and compassionate. And in many schools all over the world, there are medical humanities classes in various forms that are oriented exactly to this, to cultivate these skills among medical students. Now, does literature has any use in modern biomedicine? It is true that all these cases I showed you derive from the past. Do we have doctors who are writing today? Do we have fiction or poetry that can incorporate all the complexity of medical science today? The answer is yes, and it is out there for us to discover it. And last but not least, is it something really that I can do? I don't have the answer, or I won't tell you the answer, but at this moment I will invite the next speaker, Theodora Ioannidou, to give you this answer. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, so at this point, Theodora will go on with her presentation, and we can accommodate questions about non-academic writing right after that. Theodora, the floor is yours.
Okay, I will also try to have a share screen. It's the first time I'm doing it, so I hope it works. Hello, everyone. See my screen?
Saad is sharing the screen. I don't know why. Okay, let me boot shot off. Okay.
You cannot see my presentation?
Hold on. Let me start clean here. Okay. Try it again.
One moment. Okay.
Okay, at the bottom is a share button in the middle of the screen. Do you see that button at the bottom of your Zoom platform?
Yeah, I see
It
it.
says, share. Click,
closed.
click on the share button, and then you'll see screens open. Pick a screen.
Okay.
Okay. This
I'm
is
sorry about the
that's
delay.
all right, teaching on the fly. It'll take a while for all of us to learn this platform. Yeah, just click on the share button at the bottom. Just, okay, there you go. Okay. Now click on the screen to share. One of those screen. Okay. Okay, there you go. You see it? Do you see the screen? Whoop, you should. Okay, you see it now? You see the screen? Okay,
Yeah,
it's okay.
I can see
You're
the
picking another
Can you-
screen. That's okay. That screen right there. That's what you want, right?
presentation. Can everyone see the presentation?
Okay, it looks good. Looks good. Looks very good.
Okay. So may I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in this webinar today. So my role here is to present you the art of writing in combination with medical studies. For me, I started writing from the age of 10. My journey so far had its ups and downs. Up until this point, I'm a medical student. I like to consider myself as a writer and a poet. I try to keep on writing along with my medical studies. Sometimes it's difficult, but I think something that's really rewarding. Also, in this presentation, I will try to show you the benefits of having writing as a habit or as a hobby, the possibilities for a medical practitioner to start writing, and the reasons that many times someone gets discouraged from this thing. So, writing as a hobby. A huge benefit of this hobby is that it doesn't need any special equipment, and it can be done any time in any place. You just need to have a paper or a pencil or a pen. Even sometimes not even that. Sometimes you just need your phone. If you have an idea, you just open your phone, you have a note, and it's so easy that doesn't have any space, doesn't bother, is not noisy. It doesn't bother anyone. Also, you can acquire a really good skills in vocabulary and writing. You learn new words, you apply these new words in your stories, you apply those words in your everyday speaking and communication. That also helps with your communication skills in your everyday life and also in your professional life with patients. While doing this, you're actually starting paying attention to details. You see the world in a different way around you. You see things that you never saw before or you never kept into your mind. That also helps in keeping details in your mind from your patients, making you also a better practitioner in medicine. That also helps your memory, remembering things, keeping things in your mind that you may use later. It also strengthens your imagination. You can just construct your own space, your own world. You can put yourself into that one. You can just distract yourself from the reality around you. So at some point, it can also be a stress relieving experience. So, a medical practitioner, right? The answer is yes. And in general, anyone can write. There are people who were born with the talent to write, but that doesn't mean necessarily that only people who have the talent in writing can become writers. What I always believe is that practice makes perfect. So write every day, trying to find inspiration, write different stories, even advice. You will just become better with time. You will adopt things, you will evolve things. And always keep in mind that it doesn't have to be professional. When you start writing, you should not have in mind that I'm starting writing, so I'm going to publish what I'm writing. You can always keep it as a diary or a journal for yourself or your friends, your close ones, and just enjoy what writing offers you. More specifically for a medical practitioner, It's not something that I found in my research. It's something mostly as a personal opinion. It's statistically easier to start that as a hobby because as medical students and medical practitioners, we have a high level education. We finished a 6-year or more years of university. We are skilled students, at least in Greece, but I also think that happens in other countries. We need a really high mark in order to pass in medical school. Especially in the Greek exam, we need a really high mark. So if not all of us, most of medical students have a really good baseline in writing expression. We have a really good vocabulary, not only from our high school years, but also from the university years. We learn really new terminology, many medical terms that we can also use in what we write. We also adopt communication skills because we all come in touch with a lot of people daily. And this also gives us a lot of opportunities for inspiration. Now, these sources of inspiration, I just have 3 of them right now. One source can be the patients for medical history and physical examination. For example, when we take the medical history, we listen to the other people, we listen to his background, his socioeconomic background, we listen to his stories, we listen to his problems, his concerns, to his fears, we experience his emotions. And also through the physical examinations, we can just observe things like scars or some illnesses and some diseases that need to be treated. We also interact with healthcare staff. That means that we interact with other colleagues, other doctors or nurses. And that also helps us because we just communicate about the reality and about the society. We just keep updated of things that happen. And also through medical congresses and seminars, especially if those seminars are international like this one, we come in touch with people from different countries, different backgrounds, different cultures. And that also benefits us because we learn about what happens in other areas of the world. Now, I want to give you an example about how it's to have a work that contains medical stuff inside. This is actually one of my latest poems. It was an edition of the last minute. I just did a translation like an hour ago. It's not like the best translation that you can find, but I didn't want to lose the rhyme that existed in the Greek text. I kept the Greek text in order for the Greek people to see difference between the original one and the translated one. But as you can see, I highlighted the words that actually refer to medical stuff, like surgery, salvation, that means like cure or treatment, coma, scalpel, and illness. Like the general idea of this poem has to do about conditions that actually bring illness to your mental health, that actually threaten your well-being, and you just need to be courageous enough to proceed to the operation in order to take them outside of your mind. I don't want to stay that much in this one. I hope you got the point. I will proceed to the most important topic about me is that why medical practitioners get discouraged in starting writing. A huge problem is always the lack of time. We need to be present at the hospital a lot of hours. We have really huge shifts. And also, especially medical students and interns, we have a huge amount of study. We spend a lot of hours in studying the theory, in studying the newest publications, in order to keep updated and be good in what we do. A lot of times that leads to burnout. We end up being without energy, without will of doing anything else. We also, like, there are some people that need concentration. They need special conditions in order to write something. They need to be in their special place, in a special environment, maybe to be in their home, in a place that it's silent and it's calm, maybe with some special music that helps them. And it's something that you can not always find so easily. Another huge problem, and I think also Christoph mentioned that, is the discouragement from the background. For example, from family, relatives, friends. I remember when I was in high school, for example, I had a huge discouragement from my Greek professor because he was always finding problems in my way of expression. And I became so disappointed that I actually gave up writing for like almost 2 years. And the same thing happened when I entered medical school, when my family told me that it's not something that it's worth keeping up on it. And it's something that I also thought of myself, because I thought that I should do as they say, concentrate in my studies and have good marks and graduate with a really good mark and graduate of my time without any delay. And because we have a saying in Greece that says that you cannot just do multiple things at the same time. And that also has to do with priorities that you put. Well, like after all these that I have been through, I don't really agree with this right now, especially after the benefits that I have seen that poetry has and fiction has to offer to a medical student and a medical practitioner. And I also need to show you some examples from the medical field. All these four are actually doctors who just took writing. For example, the first one, Khalid Hosseini, I did a small research about him, and he was actually he wrote a lot of bestsellers, and actually after his first bestseller, he even retired from his medical career and he became a full-time writer. He has won lots of awards. He has been into the New York Times bestseller list for lots of weeks. The one on the right, Tess Gerritsen, is actually also a physician in Hawaii. She became a doctor because her family disapproved of her being a writer because they were worried about the sustainability of this profession, because the risk of no profit, it's really actually huge. So while practicing physiology, he started also writing novels, and he wrote medical thrillers, for example, or crime thrillers that had to do with medical theory inside. And she's actually been published in more than 40 countries right now, and she has more than 25 million copies of her books bought. Even one of her books called Harvest became a series on TV. Another two examples is Michael Stephen Palmer, who also wrote medical thrillers, and his books were translated in more than 35 languages. And his book Extreme Measures even became a movie in 1996. And also, one last example that I want to include from Greece is Manolis Anagnostakis, who is a really famous poet. He studied medicine in Thessaloniki. He did his specialty in radiology, and his poems were translated in 4 languages and even became songs. So, in conclusion, these are actually the key points that I want you to take home, let's say. That writing contains a healthy mind. Exercising your mind, it also helps your mental health, your psychology, and it helps the well-being of the person. It's one of the main components in order to have full personality and a healthy being. And it's doable. It's easy to do. You can find time. You can do it with a good planning, with a good time management. You don't have to consume a lot of time. If fiction is not for you, you think that you don't have time to write like a novel of 600 pages, you can also turn into poetry or into short stories. You also saw from Crystals about like the small short story of one line. So don't be concerned about the length, don't be concerned about the time, just you need to be determined to follow this one, and you should not get discouraged. You don't have to listen to what people say around you. They don't know as well as you do yourself. It's better also not to be one-sided. It's also to have multi-side development. And as I said, writing helps actually in our medical profession. It helps improve communication, compassion, as well as Crystal said. And That's actually all I had to say. And I hope I have motivated today some of you to just take a chance and try to write yourself something. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very insightful presentation, Theodora. To be honest, because I'm also trying to define myself as an author as well, I'm trying to write fiction and poetry. I have seen that literature is a bootcamp. You learn how to read a lot. You learn how to read in a quality manner because you learn how to understand what you read. You learn how to express yourselves. And most importantly, you learn how to see the stories happening around you. And there is, although literature will not bring social prestige, there is what I call the revenge of literature. We have in medicine an academic internal language with p-values, with specific terminology that we can all understand between us, and that is the way we can communicate between us our tremendous experiments and discoveries and failures as well. These are our stories, and we also have more simple everyday words in which we can translate our experience as a doctors. Think about it. In 100 years from now, our research will have become outdated. Nobody will read a research paper of 2020 in 2120. It won't matter. Do you read research papers of 1910? No. However, if our literature survives till then, more people, not only medical professionals, but also common people, everyday people will be able to read it and resonate with the way we felt, the way we interacted with patients and physicians, and the way life was, and the way life is always. So think about incorporating reading, and why not writing in your life as doctors and either practitioners or researchers. At this point, I would like to thank you all for your attention. We can now open the floor for points and questions. Rehab is not with us because she had to attend another meeting. However, if you have questions about academic writing, we can try to answer them. Otherwise, we can bring you in communication with her. The floor is yours now.
Well, I'll ask a question, Christos, if no one does. And you can answer this as well as the speaker. Does you think a good writer has to be a good reader?
Definitely, because there are two sayings about writing. One is that to write, you have to read. This is so simple. And actually, important writers, for example, here in Greece, we have a poet, Yorgos Seferis, who received a Nobel Prize. So he was a good poet. However, the very same person has passed many years of his life reading T.S. Eliot, a well-known English poet who was a source of inspiration for him. And actually, as I said before, literature is a collective thing. We read a lot, we collect knowledge, memories, writings and stories of other people, and we can synthesize this way. And of course, this is a kind of a contradictory, but we write deleting. We always change what we're writing. You can't start and draft now a paragraph and this will be the final manuscript. You will have to delete it again and again and write it again and again. And this is also a procedure of reading. I don't know if Theodora has a different opinion or something else to add to this.
Thank you.
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yes. Yes, Theodore, you had something to say?
Yeah, can you repeat the question one more time?
If you can repeat the question.
I'm sorry, Theodore, what did you say? Perhaps we lost her.
She asked you to repeat the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just take the opportunity to say now that I know that everyone is kind of unused to this platform. You will become more comfortable initially. I think for so that's why some people aren't participating. It's just new. It's something in medicine, you get new things and you're kind of curious and don't know how to use it, but with time it'll come.
I agree, but to be honest, there are some people who can be challenged here, and I think that Ioannis has a lot of insights about history and literature, so he can definitely make a point here.
Okay, let's go. I need a buzzer to heat up the seat of somebody.
Hi, from me.
Okay, Yannis, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because my connection is not very good and I cannot hear very well, but I will try.
Okay.
As Christos mentioned it, yes, the literature is a collective procedure. And I think that
well, I'm sorry we lost him. Okay, well, we just move on there, Christos.
And I can also challenge Marco Doros to give some insights about literature. He's a philologist after all.
Okay, Marco? Perhaps he's taking a nap, or he maybe lost the connection.
You can't hear me. I'm sorry.
Go
Hello,
ahead.
thanks, Christo. Thank you very much. So, as a philologist, I can say that literature is definitely something eternal, and as a classical philologist, the one who reads those Iliad and Odyssey and those other classical stuff in the original language, I can say that literature is something and it's again a question of debate which pieces of literature we can nominate as classical or which not. But if it's a kind of a classical literature, and I now mean not ancient literature, but the one which is better than the other, which will survive in a couple in centuries. So if it's a classical literature, if it's the one which is worth to survive, if it has some eternal ideas, then it's definitely a question of eternity. And I totally agree with Christos, who said that no one will read articles which were written this year, but there will be most probably people who will read some literature pieces. And so that's what I wanted to say. And concerning the topic, the topic of literature and medicine, this one is actually my research, a kind of a research topic, as far as I do the medical vocabulary of the historical books of the Bible. And this possibility, this topic gives us an opportunity to see not only how the literature or how the history or how the historiography, as what I do is actually basically a chronicle, actually 6 books which contain a kind of a chronicle. This research and this kind of work give us the possibility, the insight, not only to literature or to history, but also to the history of medicine. And I think that it will be definitely worth, especially for those from Ukraine, to read a book by Yaroslav Sparek, who is an oncologist and who did this insightful work, the same as Christos did for Macbeth. He did that for the Bible, for the Holy Scripture, in order to actually to diagnose diseases and to tell about the level of medicine and history of medicine during that times and that period. And what I do is basically anthropology. As soon as I anthropology, textual studies, as soon as I research how this or that lexeme, this or that word was used in which context with which meaning, and also how it different from one manuscript to the other, if there is a difference, or from one translation to the other, if again there is a difference. So that's what I wanted to say as a philologist and as a person who has at least a little connection between the topic medicine and literature.
Thank you very much, Marco.
Was I not chaotic again?
Not at all. You were a bit shy because you have an extensive knowledge of the field. And there is also a question from Saad. I can read it first and then try to give an answer. And of course, invite Theodora to give an answer as well. So Saad asks what would people say if one says what are the practical benefits of writing, this kind of writing in literature, of course. And he asks us to name or post some references, opportunities, journals, or publication houses that are related to writing in medicine. In my experience, there is also a hybrid kind of writing about humanities. Humanities is an umbrella term that contains everything with history, philosophy, and ethics in medicine. So there are a lot of journals that have a specific section for something like this. For example, there is InfesMed. InfesMed is the journal of the Italian Association of Infectious Diseases, and it has a specific type of submissions. If you read out the author guidelines, that encourages submissions about the infections in history, so infectious diseases in historical texts. So let's say that in 100 years, there will be a historical text about the coronavirus now, and somebody will be able to write about this. And it also has a section about infectious diseases in the media, in films, in novels, anywhere. This is one chance. There is also the Hormones Journal. This is a PubMed indexed journal from the Greek Society of Endocrinology, which has one section about endocrinological diseases in the history of medicine, history of endocrinology namely, and another section about the etymology of terms in endocrinology. Apart from this, there are also journals that are dedicated to what is called medical humanities. The most well-known of them is Medical Humanities. If I'm not mistaken, it is supported by the BMJ, the British Journal of Medicine, so it's quite prestigious. And you can write there about literature in medicine in a scholar manner, or you can also submit pieces that are more about fiction or poetry. In my experience, there is also the Harvard Review of Public Health. I'm not sure about its indexing, however, it is endorsed by Harvard, the Department of Public Health, in which they welcome submissions of reflections, prose, or poetry. So although these are not the kind of publications that will elevate your H index, there are also ways to combine this with classical academic medical writing. I will post some links in the chat, and if Theodora has something to add, she is welcome to do so.
I think that you cover really well this question, and I actually didn't just search that much with references, but I will certainly do so from now on because it's something really interesting, and we need to find out more about this, and we need to share that with more medical students. I think it's something that it's really worth our time.
Okay, now you're not asking questions. I will ask a question. Which of you in these days that we are in quarantine uses some time in order to write, either something academic or something non-academic? Or which of you feels an inclination to do so? Because normally we have more time than usually these days.
Only me?
Probably yes, but maybe other
Sure,
people
why not?
try to say it so. I'm just posting some of the links in the chat.
Okay.
And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, there will be a certificate as well for this webinar. So you can also write your emails in the chat to make sure that you will receive it. Angeliki, is it so?
Okay, to get credit, they put their email in the chat box.
Everyone who is attending this webinar is welcome to write his email in the chat box, so he receives the certificate later.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding us.
Good. I can see the emails piling up.
And if some of you have any questions about writing or they want to start and they need maybe some information, that have to do some questions or some feedback, you are free to contact me anywhere you want. Also in my email, I have written my email here. I would be really glad to help. It would be my pleasure to motivate more people in this area.
Okay, this is a platform to use it.
Yeah.
Same goes for me if you haven't been bored with all the literature I'm speaking about. Okay, and I also remind you that you can also ask about academic writing. We can give you some answers about this as well.
I have a general question. Do you find that people are writing less now with the internet around? Just generally?
I think that they're still writing a lot, but the way they write has changed. Of course, they prefer to write in the computer because this is more practical. You can send it easily, you can print it as well. But the way that information is communicated in the internet is also very short. You have to be short, and this is the reason even why literature is moving from a macroscopic literature like novels to fiction, to very short pieces. For example, if you publish a story, if you have a story, a fiction, and you want to publish it in Facebook, it must be less than 10 lines because otherwise only 25% of the people who will see this post will read it. So some technical features of internet and of computers in general encourage writing less. Writing less is good because it is also a demand for quality.
I think there may be some questions. Hold on. No, just comments. It's okay.
Has everybody written their email?
Okay, do you want to move on to the next presentation?
There is no other presentation.
Oh,
If
I'm
there
sorry.
are
I'm sorry.
no more
Okay.
questions. I would like, on behalf of the European Student Think Tank and Acknowledgments, to thank all of you for giving us your Friday afternoon. I would like to thank Angeliki for helping organize this. I would like to also thank Theodora and Rehab for joining this effort and giving so insightful presentations. And of course, thank John Bennett and Internet Medicine for hosting us one more time.
And I'd like to thank all of you for participating and for Christos for putting this together. Let me just say that this technology is going to get bigger and bigger and become more of a part of your educational process in medicine. So like anything in medicine, during your medical career, you're going to have to learn lots of technical things. And some things you don't like, but you got to do it. And this is one of them. It's like learning how to read almost. You have to become computer literate. I think you're going to have to become efficient on the internet, the way you interact. And there's a learning curve. You'll learn how to get good sound, how to get good connections. And it's important, just as it was important buying good books when you were learning. You have to get, it'd be nice to get a good internet connection. It's part of your education, essentially. That's my message today. And I thank everyone. And I look forward to the next, when is the next session, Christos?
There are some thoughts, but I will let you know, I think tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, and thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, thank you all.